Doug Leby, the CEO of Beeline, always says it's about people, not pencils, right? And I agree with him to a point, but I always think it's about if we look at how organizations procure the materials they need to make a pencil, why can't we take the same first principles that they have to properly resource demand or strategic workforce plan within our organizations? Because I think if you get that piece right, it will make it much easier to fulfill orders, if you like. And those orders are either borrow, build, or bought. And I think that's always been the problem with the traditional MSP and staffing model, is that they're coming to the market last in time when really they should be coming first in time, because they've worked closely with the business to resource demand plan properly. So I suppose what my question is, Dennis, is resource demand planning or strategic workforce planning a key piece of the puzzle to getting this right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's something that I fully agree with. The challenge is having that strategic view. Where do you want to have your company in 5 years' time? Where do you want to have it in 10 years' time? I mean, if we take a look at companies like an Apple, really those innovative players at the time, they had a strategy. They knew, like, that's where I want to be in 10 years. How do I get there? No clue. But at least they had a very clear vision on where they want to get. And I think it's the same for strategic workforce planning. It's absolutely necessary that you define that endpoint to say, okay, in 5 or 10 years, that's where I want to be. These are the skills I want to have in my organization to deliver these strategic things I want to do with the company. But it's very challenging. It's very challenging. And to elaborate on it, I think it's the market is very volatile today, even more than ever. It's ever changing. So also companies need to adjust very quickly. They need to be much more agile. So the workforce planning requires to be something that they need to prepare for properly. And I think, again, not all companies have the same maturity on that level, but it's absolutely key to do that. Because if you compare to pens and pencils, you kind of know how much demand you will have. But for for the workforce, it's kind of more challenging. So I think it definitely has a couple of challenges. But doing that diligent work of the workforce planning, having those AI tools in place as well to make a forecast on which one you need to have, which are the skills you want to have in the future, taking multiple parameters into account. That complexity, I think that is really where an AI-driven strategic workforce planning can help so much in getting those strategies rolled out and having a real plan, a long-term plan on which resources you want to have for your organization. Do they need to be contractors? Do they need to be short-term consultants? Do I want to convert certain people in a role? What are the expectations of the workforce as well? Because that's changing as well. You can make a perfect workforce planning, but you need to see on the type of profiles you're going to be hiring, what their expectations might be, what is typical for their type of roles and etc. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I had a question for you, Dennis, in relation to skills and skills-based hiring. I sorry, I've got a bit of a dodgy throat, but on skills-based hiring, I think you referenced it earlier, internal skills, right? How we can find them, Dennis. But are you seeing in some of the enterprises that you advise any interest in companies like Gloat or Gig.ai or Degree that have internal skills marketplaces? Is the enterprise ready for these, particularly in the contingent or extended workforce world? Are you seeing some early appetite for that, Dennis?
Yeah, I think some companies have the appetite, but I think it really depends on the maturity and the involvement of an HR. I think that is typically where it's an interesting discussion, because that's really where HR and talent acquisition comes in. Whereas I think typically in our industry of 10 years ago, it was procurement driven. And they didn't look into that space enough. And that, I mean, there's no harm done. But I think going forward, that's really the ownership of HR and talent acquisition to look into those things. And I think they are stepping up in that role. So I think there's definitely room for those type of technologies and tools. But I think it really depends on the maturity of the clients. And I think it should be owned by talent acquisition and HR, because that's really where you want to do that skills mapping. Yeah? You want to do it for your internal resource, but you want to do it as well for the external talent you have in the organization. That's the only way how you can map it out for your strategic workforce planning as well.